The world of fairy tales. Imagine a Cinderella where stepsisters slice off their own toes to fit the glass slipper, or a Snow White where the evil queen dances in red-hot iron shoes until her demise. These tales were survival guides, teaching children about real dangers. Before children's books, fairy tales were whispers in the night. The Brothers Grimm collected these tales, preserving their raw, unflinching nature. They believed children should be prepared for harsh realities. Their collection, published in 1812, reflected medieval Europe's brutal life. The Brothers Grimm shaped our perception of fairy tales. Their stories, filled with darkness and complexity, were cautionary tales. The forest symbolized danger and enchantment. Wolves represented lurking predators. Despite the darkness, their tales offered hope and resilience. Medieval Europe was brutal, with disease, famine, and war. Peasants' lives were harsh. Children worked alongside adults. Stories reflected this reality, teaching survival and caution. They were not just entertainment, but guides for a harsh world. Famine cast a shadow over many fairy tales. Hansel and Gretel's abandonment reflects desperate choices and scarcity. The witch's house symbolizes false abundance and the dangers of greed. The tale underscores the fragility of life and the struggle for survival. The dark forest is a place of wonder and terror. It represents both opportunity and threat, a place of transformation. In tales, it's where characters face danger and test their courage. The forest is a place where one's moral compass is tested. Fairy tale villains embody primal fears. Witches and wolves symbolize the unknown and ever-present threats. Their human flaws like vanity and greed are the true horrors. These tales remind us of the darkness within the human heart. Despite the darkness, there is hope in Grimm's tales. Heroes show resilience, cunning, and courage. Cinderella and Snow White demonstrate kindness and empathy. These stories teach that even in darkness, the human spirit endures. Cinderella's stepsisters mutilate themselves for the prince. Their deceit is discovered, and they are punished brutally. Cinderella's triumph is a testament to her resilience. The blood in the slipper reminds us that happiness is hard-won. Snow White's tale is a chilling battle between beauty and envy. The evil queen's obsession leads to unspeakable acts. Snow White's death and preservation symbolize fleeting beauty. The queen's brutal punishment warns against the perils of vanity. Little Red Riding Hood. The image of a young girl in a scarlet cloak, venturing into the woods, is one that has captivated generations of children. But the Brothers Grimm's version of this classic tale is a far cry from the sanitized versions we often encounter. It is a story of naivete, deception, and the very real dangers that lurk beyond the safety of the familiar. The wolf, a cunning predator in sheep's clothing, embodies the dangers of the unknown. He deceives Little Red Riding Hood, exploiting her innocence and trust, luring her further and further into the depths of the forest. His words, smooth and reassuring, mask a sinister intent, reminding us that appearances can be deceiving, and that evil often wears a friendly face. The scene in Grandmother's cottage, where the wolf, disguised in her clothing, lies in wait, is a masterclass in suspense and horror. The Grimms spare no detail in describing the wolf's gruesome consumption of both Grandmother and Little Red Riding Hood. Their deaths, swift and brutal, serve as a stark warning about the consequences of disobedience and the ever-present threat of predation in a world where the line between safety and danger is often blurred. In the Grimm's version, there is no heroic woodsman to save the day, no miraculous resurrection. Little Red Riding Hood's story ends not with a triumphant return home, but with the chilling finality of death. This bleak ending, while unsettling, serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of heeding the warnings of those who have gone before us. Hansel and Gretel. The very names conjure up images of a house made of candy, a wicked witch, and a daring escape. But beneath the surface of this seemingly whimsical tale, the brothers Grimm weave a story of abandonment, desperation, and the terrifying resilience of children, forced to confront the darkest aspects of human nature. The story opens with an act of unimaginable cruelty. Hansel and Gretel, abandoned by their impoverished parents in the depths of a dark forest, are left to fend for themselves. This act of desperation, driven by poverty and hunger, speaks to the harsh realities of life in medieval Europe, where survival was often a matter of agonizing choices. The gingerbread house, a symbol of temptation and false hope, lures the children into a trap set by a cannibalistic witch. Her dwelling, a grotesque parody of a loving home, is filled with sweets and treats, a feast for the senses designed to lull the children into a false sense of security. The witch, a grotesque figure with an insatiable appetite, embodies the darkest fears of childhood. She is a predator who preys on the vulnerable, fattening them up for her own consumption. Her oven, a symbol of domesticity twisted into something monstrous, becomes a chilling reminder of the ever-present threat of violence and the fragility of life itself. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. The story of a maiden imprisoned in a tower. Her only connection to the outside world, her long golden hair, is a haunting exploration of isolation, longing, and the yearning for freedom. The brothers Grimm, in their retelling of this classic tale, delve into the psychological complexities of captivity and the enduring power of hope. Rapunzel, stolen from her parents as a baby and imprisoned by a possessive witch, knows nothing of the world beyond her tower walls. Her isolation is both physical and emotional. The witch, her only companion, controls her every move, manipulating her with a mixture of affection and threats. The prince, a symbol of hope and freedom, stumbles upon Rapunzel's tower and is captivated by her beauty and her plight. Their clandestine meetings, made possible by Rapunzel's long hair, offer her a glimpse of a world beyond her prison walls, a world she longs to experience for herself, but their happiness is short-lived. The witch, driven by jealousy and rage, discovers their secret and takes her revenge. She cuts off Rapunzel's hair, her lifeline to the outside world, and casts her out into the wilderness, blind and alone. This act of cruelty highlights the depths of the witch's possessiveness and the devastating consequences of her actions. Rumpelstiltskin. The name itself sounds like a whispered threat, a promise of both magic and danger. The brothers Grimm, in their retelling of this classic fairy tale, weave a cautionary tale about the seductive nature of power, the perils of making deals with the unknown, and the high cost of unchecked ambition. The story revolves around a miller's daughter, forced by her boastful father to spin straw into gold for the king. Faced with an impossible task, she makes a desperate bargain with a strange little man, a creature of magic and shadows who demands a terrible price for his services, her firstborn child. Rumpelstiltskin, a creature of folklore and nightmare, embodies the seductive and dangerous nature of magic. He offers solutions to seemingly insurmountable problems, but his gifts always come at a price. His true intentions are shrouded in mystery, and his motives remain unclear, adding to his air of menace. The queen, initially relieved by Rumpelstiltskin's aid, is soon overcome with guilt and terror at the thought of fulfilling her end of the bargain. She is faced with an agonizing choice: surrender her child to a creature of darkness, or find a way to outwit him. Rumpelstiltskin, enraged by the queen's defiance, meets a fittingly dramatic end. His power, rooted in secrets and bargains, is ultimately his undoing. The story serves as a stark reminder that even the most powerful magic comes at a cost, and that the pursuit of power, unchecked by morality, can lead to one's downfall. The Frog Prince, a tale as old as time, a beautiful princess, a magical transformation, and the promise of true love's kiss. But in the hands of the brothers Grimm, this seemingly simple story of transformation takes on a darker, more complex hue. It becomes an exploration of prejudice, compassion, and the transformative power of accepting that which we find repulsive or frightening. The princess, accustomed to a life of luxury and beauty, is initially repulsed by the frog's appearance. She is horrified by his slimy skin, his bulging eyes, and his clumsy movements. Her initial reaction, while understandable, highlights the shallowness of judging someone based solely on their outward appearance. The frog, however, is not what he seems. He is, in reality, a handsome prince trapped in a frog's body by a curse. His only hope of breaking the spell lies in the compassion of another. The princess, initially reluctant to help, is gradually won over by the frog's persistence and his unwavering belief in her inherent goodness. The act of kissing the frog, a symbol of overcoming one's prejudices and confronting that which disgusts us, is a transformative one for both the princess and the frog. It breaks the curse, revealing the prince's true form, but it also signifies a deeper change within the princess herself. She learns to look beyond appearances and to see the value in compassion and empathy. The Frog Prince, in the Grimm's retelling, reminds us that true beauty lies not in outward appearances, but in the kindness of our hearts and our willingness to see beyond the surface. The fairy tales collected by the brothers Grimm weren't spun from whimsical fancy. They were born from the harsh realities of medieval and early modern Europe, a period marked by hardship, uncertainty, and the ever-present threat of both natural and man-made disasters. Life for the average peasant was a constant struggle for survival, a delicate balancing act between meager sustenance and the ever-present threat of famine, disease, and violence. Imagine a world where the seasons held the power of life and death, where a late frost could mean starvation and a drought could spell ruin for an entire community. The Grimm's tales, with their recurring themes of hunger, poverty, and abandonment, reflect these harsh realities, offering a glimpse into a world where survival was often a matter of luck, and where even the bonds of family could be tested to their breaking point. The peasants, bound to the land by a rigid feudal system, toiled under the often unforgiving rule of their lords. They worked long hours in the fields, their lives dictated by the rhythms of nature and the demands of their social superiors. Life held little promise of advancement or escape, and the stories they told often served as a form of catharsis, a way to process the hardships they faced, and to find solace in shared experiences. These stories, passed down through generations, weren't just entertainment. They were a means of preserving history, of passing on knowledge and warnings to future generations. They served as a reminder of the precariousness of life, the importance of community, and the ever-present need for caution and resilience. Death, in its many forms, cast a long shadow over medieval and early modern Europe. Disease, rampant and often misunderstood, swept through communities with terrifying speed. The Black Death, a horrific plague that ravaged Europe in the 14th century, wiped out entire villages, leaving behind a trail of grief, fear, and social upheaval. Infant mortality rates were shockingly high, and those who survived childhood faced the constant threat of infectious diseases, malnutrition, and workplace accidents. Death was a familiar presence, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the ever-present possibility of sudden loss. This constant proximity to death permeated the stories and beliefs of the time. The Grimm's tales, with their often gruesome depictions of violence, murder, and cannibalism, reflect this morbid fascination with mortality. Death wasn't something to be feared and avoided. It was an integral part of the natural order, a force to be reckoned with and, if possible, outsmarted. The ever-present threat of death served as a constant reminder to live life to the fullest, to appreciate the fleeting moments of joy and connection, and to find meaning in a world where tomorrow was never guaranteed. Medieval and early modern Europe was a society sharply divided along lines of class, gender, and religion. The feudal system, with its rigid hierarchy and unequal distribution of power and wealth, created a world where your birth determined your destiny. The nobility, a small but powerful elite, enjoyed a life of privilege and luxury, while the peasantry, who made up the vast majority of the population, struggled to survive on the meager fruits of their labor. Women, largely excluded from positions of power and influence, were often relegated to the domestic sphere, their lives defined by their roles as wives, mothers, and daughters. This rigid social hierarchy bred resentment, fear, and mistrust between the different classes. The Grimm's tales, with their recurring themes of wicked stepmothers, jealous siblings, and power-hungry rulers, reflect these social anxieties, offering a glimpse into a world where power dynamics were constantly at play, and where those who dared to challenge the established order often faced dire consequences. Fear, whether of the unknown, of social repercussions, or of supernatural forces, was a powerful tool of control. The Grimm's tales, with their warnings about the dangers of disobeying authority, straying from the path, or trusting the wrong people, reinforced these societal norms, encouraging obedience and conformity. In a world where science and reason had yet to fully take hold, superstition and belief in the supernatural held sway over the hearts and minds of medieval and early modern Europeans. People looked to the heavens for signs and portents, sought explanations for the unexplainable in the realm of magic and folklore, and attributed misfortune to curses, witchcraft, and the intervention of malevolent spirits. The Grimm's tales, with their cast of witches, talking animals, and magical objects, reflect this fascination with the supernatural. These stories served as a way to make sense of the unexplainable, to rationalize misfortune, and to cope with the anxieties of a world that often felt unpredictable and uncontrollable. The belief in magic, both benevolent and malevolent, permeated everyday life. Amulets and charms were worn to ward off evil, rituals were performed to ensure good harvests, and stories were told to teach children about the dangers of venturing into the unknown. The Grimm's tales, while often frightening, also offered a sense of wonder and possibility, reminding listeners that even in a world bound by superstition and fear, magic could exist and hope could triumph over despair. The Grimm's fairy tales, despite their often gruesome details and unsettling themes, were at their core moral tales. They served as a means of instructing children about the dangers of the world, the importance of virtue, and the consequences of succumbing to vice. Little Red Riding Hood, with its cautionary message about the dangers of talking to strangers and straying from the path, taught children to be wary of the unknown and to heed the advice of their elders. Cinderella, with its emphasis on kindness, patience, and humility, reinforced the virtues of hard work and inner beauty, even in the face of adversity. These stories, while entertaining, served a vital social function. They helped to instill moral values, reinforce societal norms, and prepare children for the challenges and temptations they would inevitably face in their own lives. The Grimm's tales, while rooted in a specific time and place, continue to resonate with audiences today because they tap into universal themes of good versus evil, the struggle for justice, and the enduring power of hope. They remind us that, even in the darkest of times, even when surrounded by danger and uncertainty, the human spirit can endure, and that stories have the power to guide us, teach us, and ultimately, help us find our way in the world. The forest. A place of enchantment and terror, of verdant beauty and lurking shadows. In the world of fairy tales, it is rarely a mere backdrop. It is a symbolic landscape, a reflection of the human psyche, and a testing ground for the heroes and heroines who dare to enter its shadowy depths. For the people of medieval and early modern Europe, the forest was a very real and ever-present part of their lives. It represented both opportunity and threat, a source of sustenance and a haven for outlaws and wild beasts. It was a place where the familiar rules of society often crumbled, and where one's survival depended on their wits, their courage, and a bit of luck. In the Grimm's tales, the forest becomes a liminal space, a place where the boundaries between the known and the unknown blur, and where the consequences of one's choices can be both wondrous and terrifying. It is a place of transformation, where children lose their innocence, heroes confront their fears, and the true nature of one's heart is revealed. The forest is a place of duality. It is both a place of death and decay, where fallen leaves rot and bones lie bleached in the undergrowth, and a place of vibrant life, where birdsong fills the air and delicate wildflowers push through the darkness to reach the light. It is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, even in the face of death and decay, the potential for beauty, growth, and renewal persists. The wolf. Few creatures evoke such primal fear and fascination. In the world of fairy tales, it is more than just a predator. It is a symbol of the untamed wilderness, the lurking threat of violence, and the ever-present danger that lurked beyond the safety of the village walls. For the people of medieval and early modern Europe, wolves were a very real threat. They preyed on livestock, and occasionally on humans, their presence a constant source of anxiety and fear, especially during the harsh winter months when food was scarce. In the Grimm's tales, wolves often represent the dangers of the unknown, the seductive power of deception, and the consequences of straying from the path of righteousness. The wolf in Little Red Riding Hood, for example, embodies the dangers of trusting strangers and the importance of heeding the warnings of one's elders. He is a master of disguise, his charming demeanor masking his predatory nature, a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The wolf, with its keen senses, its ability to move silently through the shadows, and its capacity for both brutality and cunning, served as a potent symbol of the ever-present threat of violence and the fragility of human life in a world where danger could spring from the darkness at any moment. The witch. A figure of enduring fascination and fear, she embodies the archetype of the powerful female, both revered and reviled, often misunderstood and feared. In the Grimm's tales, witches are rarely one-dimensional villains. They are complex figures, often driven by loneliness, ambition, or a desire for revenge. They represent the untamed aspects of nature, the dangers of unchecked power, and the seductive allure of forbidden knowledge. The witch's cottage, often located deep in the heart of the forest, far from the prying eyes of society, is a place of both magic and danger. It is a place where the laws of nature are bent to her will, where potions bubble in cauldrons, and spells are cast with a whispered word and a flick of the wrist. The witch is often depicted as a solitary figure, living on the fringes of society, feared and ostracized by those who do not understand her power. She's a reminder of the patriarchal fear of female power, of the woman who dares to live outside the confines of societal expectations. But the witch is also a figure of enduring fascination, especially for young girls and women who see in her a reflection of their own potential power, a power that society often seeks to suppress or control. Food, or rather, the lack of it, casts a long shadow over many of the Grimm's tales. The recurring motif of hunger, of children abandoned in the woods, of families driven to desperate measures to survive, speaks to the very real anxieties of a time when famine was a constant threat and sustenance was never guaranteed. The harsh realities of medieval and early modern life, with its dependence on agriculture, its limited food preservation techniques, and its susceptibility to crop failures and disease, meant that hunger was a constant companion for many. The stories of Hansel and Gretel, abandoned by their starving parents, and of Little Red Riding Hood, venturing into the woods to bring food to her sick grandmother, take on a new and poignant dimension when viewed through the lens of scarcity and survival. Food in the Grimm's tales is rarely just about sustenance. It is often imbued with symbolic meaning. The witch's gingerbread house in Hansel and Gretel, for example, represents temptation and false hope, a sugary trap designed to lure the children to their doom. The poisoned apple in Snow White symbolizes the dangers of envy and the seductive nature of forbidden knowledge. Food, in its abundance or its absence, serves as a constant reminder of the precariousness of life, the importance of resourcefulness, and the ever-present tension between desire and restraint. The journey of fairy tales from the shadowy depths of oral tradition to the brightly lit screens of modern cinema is a testament to the adaptable nature of storytelling. As these tales have been passed from generation to generation, they have been shaped and molded to reflect the evolving values, anxieties, and aspirations of each era. Nowhere is this more evident than in the sanitized versions of fairy tales popularized in the 20th century, particularly through the transformative lens of Walt Disney. Walt Disney, a visionary storyteller in his own right, recognized the enduring power of fairy tales but also understood the need to make them palatable for a mass audience, particularly children. Under his guidance, the darker, more unsettling aspects of these tales were softened or excised altogether, replaced with catchy tunes, adorable animal sidekicks, and an emphasis on romance and happy endings. Cinderella's stepsisters, no longer subjected to gruesome punishments, were relegated to the role of bumbling comic relief. The evil queen in Snow White met a less gruesome, albeit still dramatic end, falling to her death rather than suffering a prolonged and agonizing punishment. And the wolves, those embodiments of primal fear, were often recast as lovable rogues, their predatory instincts tempered by a touch of Disney magic. This sanitization of fairy tales, while perhaps robbing them of some of their original grit and psychological complexity, introduced them to a wider audience than ever before. Disney's animated films, with their vibrant visuals, memorable soundtracks, and heartwarming messages, became cultural touchstones, shaping the way generations of children and adults perceive these timeless tales. While Disney's influence on the fairy tale genre is undeniable, recent decades have witnessed a resurgence of interest in the darker, more complex aspects of these stories. Modern retellings, both in film and literature, are delving beneath the surface of these familiar narratives, exploring the psychological depths, the moral ambiguities, and the enduring power of the original tales. Films like Maleficent and The Huntsman Winter's War offer a revisionist perspective on classic villains, exploring the motivations and backstories that led them to their wicked deeds. Television series like Once Upon a Time and Grimm weave intricate narratives that blend fairy tale elements with contemporary settings and characters, blurring the lines between fantasy and reality. In literature, authors like Angela Carter, Neil Gaiman, and Margaret Atwood have deconstructed and reimagined fairy tales, infusing them with feminist themes, psychological depth, and a healthy dose of social commentary. These modern retellings challenge traditional notions of good and evil, hero and villain, offering a more nuanced and often unsettling exploration of human nature. This return to the darker roots of fairy tales reflects a growing appetite for stories that challenge, provoke, and unsettle. In a world grappling with complex social issues, environmental anxieties, and a sense of disillusionment with traditional narratives, These reimagined tales offer a way to explore the shadows of the human experience, to confront our fears, and to find meaning in the midst of chaos. Section 3. Fairy Tales for a Modern Age. Reflecting contemporary anxieties and aspirations. Fairy tales, despite their origins in a distant past, possess a remarkable ability to adapt to the concerns and aspirations of each new generation. Just as the Grimm's tales reflected the anxieties and beliefs of medieval and early modern Europe, so too do modern retellings of these stories serve as a mirror to our own time, reflecting our fears, our hopes, and our evolving understanding of the world. In a world grappling with the effects of climate change, stories like Frozen 2 explore themes of environmental responsibility and the need to find harmony with nature. Films like Brave and Moana challenge traditional gender roles, offering up strong, independent heroines who forge their own paths, defying expectations and embracing their own unique destinies. As societies become increasingly diverse and interconnected, modern retellings of fairy tales are beginning to reflect this reality, incorporating characters and storylines that celebrate cultural differences and challenge traditional notions of identity and belonging. The film Mulan, for example, a reimagining of a traditional Chinese folktale, offers a powerful message about courage, self-discovery, and the importance of staying true to oneself, regardless of societal expectations. Modern retellings are also exploring the psychological complexities of a world increasingly shaped by technology and social media. Stories like Wreck-It Ralph and its sequel, Ralph Breaks the Internet, examine the allure and the potential dangers of the online world, while films like Her and Ex Machina delve into the ethical implications of artificial intelligence and our evolving relationship with technology. Fairy tales, despite their often formulaic plots and archetypal characters, continue to resonate with audiences across cultures and generations because they tap into something profound and universal about the human experience. They offer a way to explore our deepest fears and desires, to grapple with moral dilemmas, and to find hope and meaning in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable. These stories remind us that the battle between good and evil, between light and darkness, is not something confined to the pages of a book or the flickering images on a screen. It is a battle that rages within each of us every day as we navigate the complexities of life, love, loss, and the search for meaning and belonging. Fairy tales at their core are stories about transformation. They teach us that it is possible to overcome adversity, to break free from the constraints of fate, and to emerge from even the darkest of experiences stronger and wiser. They remind us that even in a world that often feels cynical and disillusioned, hope, courage, and the power of love can prevail. As we continue to tell and retell these tales, both in their traditional forms and in their modern incarnations, we are not simply indulging in nostalgia or escapism. We are engaging in a timeless conversation about what it means to be human, to face our fears, to embrace our potential, and to strive for a better, brighter future. And that perhaps is the most enduring magic of all. And so, we find ourselves at the end of our journey, having delved into the shadowy depths where fairy tales first took root. We've uncovered the gruesome truths behind familiar narratives, explored the historical context that shaped their dark themes, and examined the symbolic language woven into their very fabric. But perhaps the most enduring mystery of all is this: why do these stories, born from a time so different from our own, continue to captivate our imaginations and stir our souls? The answer, it seems, lies in the timeless themes that lie at the heart of these tales. Fairy tales, despite their often fantastical settings and supernatural elements, are ultimately stories about us. They explore the complexities of human nature, our capacity for both great love and unimaginable cruelty, our vulnerability to fear and temptation, and our enduring hope for a better tomorrow. These stories, passed down through generations, serve as a bridge between the past and the present, reminding us that the challenges we face today, the struggle for identity, the search for love and belonging, the battle against injustice and despair, are echoes of the human experience throughout history. Fairy tales, in their darkness and their light, remind us that we are not alone in our struggles, that even in the darkest of forests, there is always a path to be found, a glimmer of hope to guide us towards the dawn. It's tempting to dismiss the gruesome aspects of the original fairy tales as mere relics of a more brutal time, to relegate them to the dusty shelves of childhood memories. But to do so would be to ignore the valuable lessons these stories have to offer. Fairy tales, in their unvarnished form, don't shy away from the harsh realities of life. They teach us that the world can be a dangerous place, that not everyone deserves our trust, and that even the most carefully constructed facades can conceal sinister intentions. These tales, with their warnings about the dangers of greed, envy, and unchecked ambition, serve as cautionary reminders of the consequences of succumbing to our baser instincts. They teach us the importance of courage, resilience, and the power of human connection in overcoming adversity. They remind us that true strength lies not in brute force, but in cunning, compassion, and the willingness to fight for what we believe in, even when the odds seem insurmountable. The darkness in these stories, while unsettling, serves a purpose. It highlights the consequences of our choices, the ever-present potential for both good and evil that resides within us all. Fairy tales, in their own unique way, teach us to be discerning, to think critically, and to face the world with a healthy dose of caution and a heart full of hope. By confronting our fears and anxieties through the safe distance of storytelling, we equip ourselves to better navigate the complexities of the real world. We learn that even in the darkest of times, even when surrounded by shadows, the human spirit can endure, and that the power to overcome adversity often lies within us all. In a world saturated with technology, instant gratification, and a seemingly endless stream of information, one might question the continued relevance of fairy tales. After all, aren't these stories simply relics of a bygone era, quaint but ultimately irrelevant in our modern age? The answer, resoundingly, is no. Fairy tales, far from being outdated, are more relevant than ever. Their enduring appeal lies in their ability to transcend time and place, to speak to the universal truths of the human experience that remain constant, even as the world around us changes at a dizzying pace. The themes that resonated with audiences centuries ago, love, loss, fear, hope, the battle between good and evil, continue to hold meaning for us today. We still yearn for connection, for belonging, for a sense of purpose in a world that can often feel overwhelming and isolating. We still grapple with questions of identity, morality, and the meaning of life itself. Fairy tales, with their timeless wisdom and their ability to tap into the depths of human emotion, provide a framework for understanding these complexities. They offer a lens through which to view our own lives, to find meaning in our struggles, and to draw strength from the enduring power of the human spirit. As we close the book on this exploration of the dark side of fairy tales, a new chapter begins. The stories we've uncovered, with their unsettling truths and timeless lessons, are now yours to carry forward. What will you do with them? Perhaps you'll revisit these tales with fresh eyes, appreciating their depth and complexity in a way you hadn't before. Maybe you'll share them with others, sparking conversations about morality, resilience, and the power of storytelling to illuminate the human experience. Or perhaps these stories will simply linger in the back of your mind, adding a new layer of meaning to the world around you. The true power of fairy tales lies not in their ability to transport us to fantastical realms, but in their ability to awaken something within us, a sense of wonder, a thirst for adventure, a belief in the possibility of transformation. These stories, with their enduring themes and their ability to speak to the deepest parts of ourselves, remind us that the power of storytelling is a potent force, one that can shape our beliefs, guide our actions, and ultimately inspire us to create our own happily ever afters. So go forth and explore the world of fairy tales, both the light and the shadow. Embrace the darkness, find hope in the light, and never stop believing in the power of stories to illuminate the path ahead.